Jalapeño. It is one of the most recognized peppers in the world, and for most people, it is the first pepper they ever try that actually feels hot. It comes from Mexico, where it has been grown for thousands of years, and today it is used in everything from salsas to pizza toppings. On the Scoville scale, which measures the heat of peppers, it sits between 2,500 and 8,000 units. That is actually quite mild compared to what comes later, but for a first experience with spice, it feels like a real statement. The heat builds slowly and lingers on the tongue rather than hitting all at once. Serrano. If the jalapeño is the entry point, the serrano is the next step up. Also from Mexico, it looks similar but is smaller and thinner, and that smaller size actually concentrates the heat. It measures between 10,000 and 23,000 Scoville units. Salsas made with serrano have a sharper, cleaner heat than those made with jalapeño, and the pepper holds its flavor well when eaten raw. Cooks in Mexican kitchens have relied on it for generations precisely because it delivers heat without overwhelming the other ingredients. Cayenne. It has been traded across continents for centuries and today shows up in cuisines from West Africa to India to the American South. The cayenne pepper measures around 30,000 to 50,000 Scoville units, and most of the dried red pepper powder sold in grocery stores around the world is made from it. When fresh, it is bright red and slender. When dried and ground, it becomes one of the most widely used spices on earth. The heat it produces is quick and direct, felt mostly at the front of the mouth, and it fades faster than many other peppers at its level. Tabasco. This small red pepper is famous not just as a plant, but as the base ingredient of the sauce that shares its name. It grows in Mexico and Central America and sits between 30,000 and 50,000 Scoville units, similar to cayenne but with a distinctly different character. The flavor is more acidic and sharp, which is why the sauce made from it pairs so well with dishes that need a bright lift rather than just raw heat. The McElhenney Company has been making Tabasco sauce on Avery Island in Louisiana since 1868, and the pepper has been central to their recipe the entire time. Thai bird's eye. Small things can carry surprising intensity, and this pepper is proof of that. Measuring between 50,000 and 100,000 Scoville units, the bird's eye chili is a staple across Thailand, Vietnam, and much of Southeast Asia. It is barely an inch long, but the heat it produces is fierce and immediate. It appears in curries, stir-fries, and dipping sauces, and in many households in the region, it is simply a part of everyday eating rather than something reserved for bold moments. The flavor beneath the heat is slightly fruity, which balances how aggressively it hits the palate. Habanero. For a long time, the habanero was considered one of the hottest peppers available to the average person, and it still carries that reputation in popular culture. It originates from the Amazon basin and was carried to Mexico and the Caribbean, where it became deeply embedded in local cooking. The heat level ranges from 100,000 to 350,000 Scoville units, a significant jump from anything that came before it on this list. What makes the habanero interesting beyond the heat is its flavor. It has a floral, almost tropical quality that comes through alongside the burn, making it a real ingredient rather than just a heat source. Scotch bonnet. It looks like a small, squashed hat, which is where the name comes from, and it is the backbone of Caribbean cooking in a way few other peppers can claim. The Scotch bonnet measures between 100,000 and 350,000 Scoville units, nearly identical in range to the habanero, and the two peppers are closely related. But the flavor is different enough that cooks in Jamaica, Trinidad, and across the islands treat them as distinct ingredients. The Scotch bonnet has a sweeter, fruitier taste, and it is the heat that gives jerk chicken and pepper sauces their particular character. Substituting a habanero works in a technical sense, but something in the final dish always feels slightly off. Ghost pepper. In 2007, the ghost pepper was officially certified by Guinness World Records as the hottest pepper on Earth, and that moment changed how people thought about chili heat. It comes from northeast India, where it is known locally as Bhut Jolokia, and farmers there had been growing it for generations before the rest of the world paid attention. At over 1 million Scoville units, it was the first pepper to cross that threshold, and the heat it produces is not just intense but slow. It builds over time, reaching a peak several minutes after eating, which makes it particularly difficult to manage. The Indian military has even explored its use in defensive applications. Red Savina habanero. Before the ghost pepper arrived to take the title, the red Savina held the world record for hottest pepper for nearly a decade. It is a cultivated variety of the habanero, selectively bred to produce more capsaicin, the compound responsible for heat. It was developed in California and registered in 1994, reaching up to 580,000 Scoville units. At the time, that number seemed almost impossible. It still carries the deep fruity notes of a habanero, but the heat is so much more aggressive that it behaves like a different ingredient entirely. Restaurants used it carefully, and the few hot sauces built around it developed loyal followings among people who wanted something extreme, but still flavorful. Trinidad Moruga scorpion. This pepper comes from the Moruga district of Trinidad and was identified as the world's hottest pepper in 2012 by researchers at New Mexico State University. It averages around 1.2 million Scoville units and has been measured as high as 2 million under certain growing conditions. The plant itself is deceptive in appearance, looking almost ordinary until harvested. The heat is relentless and builds in waves, lasting far longer than most other peppers. What surprises people who have experience with extreme peppers is that the Moruga scorpion also carries genuine flavor before the heat takes over, with fruity and slightly sweet notes that disappear quickly once the capsaicin does its work. 7-pot Douglas. The name comes from the claim that a single pepper has enough heat to spice 7 pots of stew, and while that is difficult to verify, the pepper itself is genuinely extraordinary. The Douglas variety is notable partly because of its dark brown, almost chocolate color, which sets it apart visually from nearly every other pepper on this list. It measures between 923,000 and 1.8 million Scoville units, placing it comfortably among the hottest peppers ever documented. It originates from Trinidad and has a reputation among chili enthusiasts for delivering intense heat alongside unusually rich, complex flavor, making it something of a favorite among people who care as much about taste as they do about heat levels. Carolina Reaper. For nearly a decade, the Carolina Reaper held the Guinness World Record as the hottest pepper in the world, and it still defines what most people think of when they imagine extreme heat. It was bred by Ed Curlin in South Carolina, and the record was officially set in 2013. The average Scoville measurement sits around 1.64 million units, with some individual peppers reaching over 2.2 million. It has a distinctive wrinkled appearance and a small pointed tail, and despite its reputation, it carries a fruity sweetness in its flavor before the heat becomes overwhelming. Eating one whole has become a kind of challenge that spread widely online, and the reactions people have documented made the pepper globally recognizable. Pepper X. In 2023, the Carolina Reaper was dethroned by another creation from the same breeder, Ed Curlin, and this time the numbers were significantly higher. Pepper X was measured at an average of 2.69 million Scoville units, making it the hottest pepper ever officially recorded. Curlin spent over a decade developing it, crossbreeding varieties to push the capsaicin content as high as biologically achievable. Unlike some extreme peppers that front-load their heat, Pepper X delivers a sustained and deep burn that affects the chest and muscles rather than just the mouth. It is not widely available as a fresh pepper and exists primarily in sauces, but its creation represents what is currently the outer boundary of how hot a cultivated pepper can be.